he can be an asshole, and I can get really pissed off, and I'll call him on being an asshole.
I'm going to stop you there. When you do this for real, don't ever say that. People don't accept mothers who drink too much wine and yell at their child and call him an asshole. I get it. I do it too. We can accept an imperfect dad. Let's face it, the idea of a good father was only invented like 30 years ago. Before that, fathers were expected to be silent and absent and unreliable and selfish. And we can all say we want them to be different. But on some basic level, we accept them.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. Where are you?
I'm here, Ryan. Where are you?
I am also here. I am here now.
Ah, Mainhuna.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing, Menhuna. Everyone, we are both here with you all today in your ear holes to discuss something that is relevant to our podcast. We are spit and Polish likingly because we're always spitting, and we both happen to be Polish. Bartek, do you have any fun Polish facts for us this time?
I don't think I do, no. Sorry.
Not fun ones. How
Not
about
fun ones.
mean ones?
What one, sorry?
Mean ones. Do you have any mean?
Mean ones. Polish people don't like the Germans.
Now that's nice. That's a nice...
I'm
That's
okay
nice.
with them.
Bartek is a collaborator. You all heard it here, folks, and a conspirator. So,
I have a relative who, during an, I would say, inappropriate time, professed their dislike of the Germans. It was during a funeral.
Okay, better than what I thought. I thought it was during
a
love.
eulogy.
Oh, good. Eulogy for Hitler's funeral.
No,
May
it was
I
just-
say something controversial here? I don't like that guy.
No, it wasn't even for a German. It was for one of our relatives.
Why did he say it at the eulogy? Why? How did it come up?
So obviously, I'm from a Polish family, and Germany has influenced my family. Let's say, to put it very lightly. And when my family came down here, obviously it was to escape the post-World War II stuff. And God, how did it go? This was like 2015. He was talking about how, when he came down here, he was working here and there and things like that. And for some reason, he brought up, the German influence on our family history. And when he mentioned it, he very heavily emphasized German scum. And I was like, oh, that really threw me off. And I remember like a year or two after that, we were at like a family dinner, and he brought up that like, I was really proud of that moment. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But in my head, I was thinking, it was kind of awkward though.
Wow. I love that it did come up, though. As it always should. I like how you said they affected your family. Mine too. Yours left because of the Russians. Mine left because of those rascally Germans. But we are both here today to talk about a movie that has come recommended, and the recommendation cycle goes Bartek recommends a movie, which is actually this particular film. Bartek was the one that pitched it our way, and then I'll be the one pitching a movie for the next episode, and then after that, you, the listening people, recommend a movie to us, and we will watch it. So yes, even you, the listening people, can pitch films our way. We add them to a list. We have a spreadsheet, and we are going through them, and we're nearing the end of the year, so I'm not going to pressure everyone to try and give us more end-of-year or festive films, but would be cool. Or another musical, because this is the year of the musical, and even the film that Bartek recommended today had some songs.
Yeah, wasn't expecting it, but there it is.
Had some musical moments. And did you ever want to hear Kylo Ren belt out a tune? I sure did, and I sure got what I wanted. But I've already said a name of a particular, a character that one of these actors has played. But Bartek, how about you remind us all of the film that you gave us this time?
Yep, so I've recommended for us the 2019 film Marriage Story.
which was quite the award contender, winner, celebrated film when it came out. Quite a milestone for Netflix as well. It was quite a big deal for when they had this on. They were pressured to have more of a theatrical release for this movie because God forbid that they do that. But this is a Noah Baumbach film who he is one of he's a very well-regarded as well writer and director. He's worked on many things over the years. He's worked with Wes Anderson. He's done his own projects. His partner, Greta Gerwig, is someone he collaborates with as well. And she's obviously someone who does a lot of her own projects that are quite successful in more recent times, obviously Barbie. And we are doing Marriage Story because, Bartek, tell us why. Why Marriage Story?
Yep, so I said at the end of the last episode that I don't watch too many modern films that come out these past couple of years, just haven't really been going to the cinema, or really keeping up with what's coming out. Usually I just find out around awards season, like, oh, what's winning all the awards? Who's everyone talking about? What films are everyone talking about? And over these past couple of years, this has been one of the ones that I've kept in the back of my mind. Like, I need to check that out at some point. Just sounded really interesting. I remember, I think it was during the Oscars. You know how they show like previews for each of the nominees during any particular award? I think there was a preview where they were showing the beginning of the iconic scene where it eventually ends in the argument, and they were speaking still pretty calmly, and I was hearing people talking about how, like, oh yeah, this is a divorce story where the people still have some level of affection for each other, and that was just a really interesting, grabbing concept for me. I wanted to see how that plays out, and also I come from a family where there has been divorce, so wanting to see also, a film adaptation of that concept.
Yes, I also was drawn in by a lot of those things about the film when it came out. I also was very much wanting to see a performance-driven film. These two lead actors have been in numerous big blockbuster projects, but both of them as well have had quite the run of films like this, the more artistic fare, you could say, or the more, awardsy type things. But definitely that was a huge factor in my wanting to see it when it first came out. I did see this when it first came out. I have not rewatched it until today. I remembered thoroughly enjoying it. I found it very emotionally gripping. I found it very funny, but I thought it told a lot of interesting nuances about this process that not everyone is aware of. Now, I do not come from a family of divorce, but I always am curious of what that is like for people. I've asked you that over the years, I've asked other friends, and everyone has their own different experiences with it. And so to see a movie that also does mention that was very enjoyable. Noah Baumbach is a filmmaker and writer that I have a passing familiarity with, and I have seen a minute amount of. He also did another film before this, the Meyerowitz Stories, I want to say it's called, which I also thoroughly enjoyed and was also is available on Netflix. It's one of the dramatic Adam Sandler vehicles, believe it or not.
Right. Okay.
And so I wanted to be seeing it for that. Him and Ben Stiller are dipshit brothers, and their dad is Dustin Hoffman. You got me. I want to watch that movie, and I did, and I enjoyed it.
Right.
And I actually kind of blurred some of the details from that movie with this film because there is a lot of, you can tell it's by the same person. Let's just say that there's a lot of.
Well, they both have story in the title.
They do, and I am glad that you did recommend this because I don't know if I would have gone back to revisit it. Not to say that it isn't an enjoyable movie, but you know how it is. Sometimes you see these films, these ones that get a lot of accolades at the time, and you watch them and you go, oh, I like that, but then you most likely will never revisit them. Unless there's a direct push to do so. Even though you at least for me, I think this is a good movie. I think it's a really excellent movie, but I couldn't see myself wanting to come back to watch it anytime in my future. So I'm glad that you did pitch it to us. So tell us a bit about your experiences watching it. What did you think?
Yeah, I was glued to the screen the whole time. Really, I walked into this hoping it would be something I'd love, and I did end up loving it. So big success there.
And how did it draw you in? You knew some of the basics of this going in, so how did it manage to keep you engaged? What were the things that grabbed you?
I think just overall, it maintained a very consistent quality in terms of being engaging. So right from the beginning, you get started on this monologue sequence where you're introduced to the ideal version of our two main characters, and it's written in a very sweet fashion. It's not entirely clear the context behind where the voice is coming from. That we find out they're in a mediation already. They're already in talks of getting divorced. But you get all of these incredibly minor details about our main characters in various little aspects of their life. Like this guy remembers all of the running jokes. He always remembers to get everyone coffee. He remembers everyone's names. She's a lot of fun during games. She'll support you in whatever. And it's presented in this very home movie fashion, giving you, yeah, like this idea that these are little vignettes of these people's lives, and you really do get the sense of like, man, these guys are, they seem kind of perfect and perfect for each other, given that, it's literally them talking about each other. How could all of this go wrong? And then you're immediately shown the blunt reality of like, it has gone wrong. And the film just kind of keeps that up from there, where it constantly keeps bringing up like this is a process that we're going through where we're not going to be a family anymore, we're not going to be together anymore, um and things will have to change, but then you still see those little things still lingering there.
I agree. And there's just such a lived in sense to this film and an authenticity. It has a very stark way of looking at these conflicts because neither of these characters are pure and perfect. There's moments and stretches where maybe you're siding with one of them over the other, but then you flip it around, and then the film flips it around and shows you that no, the one that you are siding with has also got a lot of flaws and faults to them as well, because they're both people. They're just regular folks, well, rich folks, but they're folks that are trying to make their lives something new or something different in a way that doesn't impact the other, but then that changes because, well, the other one is impacting me, so I've got to impact them, and all of the back and forths of that. And I'm a sucker for actor-led films. The visual presentation is very good. It's very top-notch. It's not show-offy. There's no show-offy camera moves. Yes, there's one-is here, and there is like the differences between the handheld and just the locked-off camera stuff, but it's never in your face with its presentation. It just is very much a fly-on-the-wall approach to this story, which is the best way to do it, because if you've got these actors here, whether they're known for great dramatic work or even your comedic greats, let them do the thing. Like, some of my favorite moments in this was just the camera slightly above looking down on little Alan Alda and lets him ramble forever. And it's just like, will the camera cut? And it's like, no, because it's Alan Alda. Let him tell the joke.
Yeah, you're right. Even with the other characters, the scenes just the camera just lets the scenes just play out.
And I thought that these two lead actors, they give fantastic performances, and I think a part of at least my reaction to it is the nice reminder that they can do these things, because both of them at this time were stuck in the big blockbuster machinery. She's obviously Scarlett Johansson doing all of the MCU and Black Widow stuff at this time, and Adam Driver was stuck in the Star Wars of it all. And you get to have the oh, they can act. Like, not to say that their performances in either of those things are bad and that it isn't art in itself, but those ventures are not showing off the pure talents of these actors. And so I get a thrill out of seeing Adam Driver be a sweetheart, but also like a prick, and Scarlett Johansson getting to really ride the wave of emotions. Like Scarlett Johansson, we know can be very funny. She's shown that throughout her career, but she's really funny in this movie as well as really heartbreaking. So I got a lot of entertainment when it first came out because of that. But being able to revisit it now, where these two actors have progressed beyond those big blockbuster fares and they're moving on to their other projects, whether they are big films or more films like this, it was interesting to kind of come back and reevaluate my opinions on their performances. I still appreciate them, but I think I'm a little less awestruck than I was at the time, because at the time I just saw these two actors as just like a tendril of their given properties that they were in. How did you feel about Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson?
Well, specifically Adam Driver, I think I even mentioned it last episode when I chose this film that Adam Driver, I think before this, I'd only seen him in those first two Kylo Ren roles, so Force Awakens and Last Jedi. But outside of that, I've been hearing over the years just how amazing he's been in a bunch of things. I've seen clips of him in like interviews where he's very charming. I think there was like the SNL skit where he was playing Kylo Ren in a comedic role. And just like little clips here and there of him in other films. And I knew through that pop culture osmosis that like, yeah, this guy is a really great actor. And I want to see one of those really great performances from him that's not Kylo Ren, which, that was a pretty good role. And I knew that he was the lead actor in this film that I was already interested in. So it just seemed like the most obvious thing to like, all right, let's break that sort of cherry by seeing Marriage Story so I can see what else this guy can do. And yeah, I was glued to his performance, very much so. Scarlett Johansson also very great. We've seen her in we've seen her in Lucy, and I know I've seen other films of hers. But yeah, just seeing how you get to see the two sides of them from many perspectives, where it's their idealized self that they admire, and then their real self and the stresses that they're going through, and they portray both really, really well.
They're both, as their characters are both in the entertainment industry. One's an actor, one's a director. Well, one becomes a director by the end as well. And we see with their lawyers that they're pressured to also perform these roles that we need to win over the other. And our two central characters are losing the thread of what they wanted in the first place. But also, as we all know, when opportunity shows itself, whether good or bad, you will take it or you won't. And Scarlett Johansson's character has been having to be on the sidelines of all of these things throughout the years. So in this divorce proceeding, she's taken the opportunity, not necessarily because she wants to fuck over her ex-husband purely, but because she's had to repress a lot of the desires to actually take things up on her own terms. And so it makes her sympathetic, even though there's a good stretch of this movie where we aren't seeing it from her perspective. We're seeing it from Adam Driver's perspective, and it seems like she's very calloused and very calculating and cruel. But then I can't help but come back to her big monologue she gave to Laura Dern, her lawyer, about like how they met and the marriage and how it all went, and then it all ends with like, oh, and I think he's having an affair. And then Laura Dern be like, fuck that guy. And I kept having that be like a grounding point as for her, or touchstone for her character. Scarlett Johansson's great in this. There's a lot of wink stuff about her career, like the types of roles she's had to play in her career and the type of roles she will go on to play, because I loved when we got to see her as an actor again, and she's like doing the pilot, and they're just putting weird shit on her face and telling her how to hold the baby wrong, and you don't understand what it is, but you just understand it on a primal level.
Yeah, this film does a lot of things like that, where yeah, all of our main two characters, they're very human, and you get to see them in both their everyday life and also the various different work lives that they get involved in, whether it's their own or others. So, like, we think back on Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson's characters and think like, oh yeah, so human. They captured so many emotions. But then you think about them with like the people in the theater company who all seem like kind of caricature-y or kind of ensemble-y. The people in that recording session where they're having like constant like scripted banter between each other and all these like little funny lines that they're saying about like, no, we don't want them to be a bad mother, things like that. Or going back to what you were saying about the lawyers, like all of the lawyer characters play sort of different types of archetypes of lawyers and are always instructing them on how to, in a way, play up the theatricality of the whole proceedings of divorce court. And then you have those moments where they step back and you have Alan Alda saying like, yes, I know it's all ridiculous, but this is the way it works. A lot of little black comedy like that.
The authenticity and the comedic over the topness I found to hit the sweet spot. What you're talking about there's a lot of truth to it, because when you even start to go outside of the main two, like with her family, they're very, very overdrawn, cartoonish portrayals, not just in the performances but the writing. But I think that they find the right level with it, and I found a lot of a lot of joy to be had out of Adam Driver in particular. He's very neurotic and controlling and demanding, and he gets very emotional very quickly, and he's a bit behind everything as well. But then, for whatever reason, you pair him up with her mother, played by Julie Haggerty, and he becomes like he's a part of a vaudeville double act from the 1930s where they're trying to lift each other, and I loved it. I thought they had great chemistry. You are aware, I mean, we've had her in a movie before too, the mother.
Yeah, I looked it up. We've had her in two, actually, I think.
That's right. You want to name the two?
She's been a mother every single time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had her in, actually, I think three. We had her in the big one, Freddie Got Fingered, obviously.
Yes.
As the mum there, which I believe we had a lot of good things to say about her there.
She's always great.
Yep. I think she was also the mum in the Amanda Bynes film, She's the Man.
Yeah, that's
with all
right.
the debutante stuff. Yep. And I think she wasn't a mum in this one, but I think she was the assistant to the male lead in Confessions of a Shopaholic.
That's right. I'm pretty sure you're correct on that. Julie Haggerty is, she's always great. Obviously, most people know her for Airplane, where she is the lead actress in that, obviously.
Right, yes.
Yes. She has this mousy presence, like physically she's very demure, but also her voice is, the best way I can describe it is shaky. She has like a shakiness in her voice at all times, which makes a lot of her one-liners very disarming when she says them, because they're so sweet in the delivery. But there's a kind of a nervy shakiness in her voice that only she can do it. Like when you see and hear her, you're like, yep, they perfectly cast her, because you know what her character is immediately.
Yep, my mind wasn't turned on when she was on screen, so I didn't look up who she was until afterwards. I'm like, oh my god, I know who you are. What do I know you from?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be that thing where when I look up who you are, it's going to be like, of course. And when I looked up and she was the mum in Freddie Got Fingered, I was casting back to when we did that episode, and I remember you talking about her and all the other things she's been in that I've seen. I'm like, of course, it's this person.
She's very much a type. And she plays a mother a lot, and so her being the mother here was a winner. Man, there's so many wonderful, pieces to this film. Whether you want to just talk about the scenes themselves, like there's so many just great that scene. you can just isolate a scene, and you could argue that's your favorite scene, and I will agree with you. But then I'll have a completely different one that's tonally different, and you'll be like, "Yeah, you know what? That is a great scene. That's something to admire about this." And those actors, as everyone knows who listens to the podcast, Bartek and I get a lot of pleasure out of a movie when we have recognizable or beloved character actors show up and do their thing. And I am a huge lover of Ray Liotta. I think he was such a great talent. And I remember when I first watched this movie, I didn't know he was in it. And then when he showed up, and he showed up as the character he does, I remember I just rubbed my hands together with glee, because I'm like, oh, yes, now I'm in. Now I was already in, but you get Ray Liotta as like shifty lawyer guy who's like gunning for the win. I'm in. And you have the contrast of Laura Dern. Laura Dern, who's an actress who's eclectic. You know, she's got so many different types of performances and roles under her belt, but then you see her in this movie and it's like, yeah, that's a perfect Laura Dern character. Like, oh yeah, that's the type she would play. I thought they were great together. And of course, Alan Alda, he was such a sweetheart. And again, another one where it's like, if you know how Alan Alda's later part of his career is, this is exactly the type of role you get Alan Alda to play. So I was a huge fan of a lot of those supporting character actors. Some known for more comedic fare or more like, you know, outside of this type of movie fare, but the way that they utilized in this was pitch perfect. How did you feel about these people, and was there any of note for you?
Yeah, I was even having a couple of moments like, oh, this person's showing up. Oh, this person's showing up. Like even the mediator, I'm like, oh, that's Robert Smigel. I wasn't expecting him to be in this.
Right.
Yeah, among the theater ensemble, there's what's his name, Wallace Shawn.
Yes, from Toy Story.
He's not one that I know the name of off the top of my head, but you and I brought him up a couple of weeks ago talking about, Rex from Toy Story. So he was very fresh in my mind. His name was too. So I'm like, oh my God, that's Wallace Shawn. And he's very funny. You get to hear the Rex voice say some inappropriate things.
Yes, you do. I really liked. She's not as huge of a like. She's more of an upcoming, but I really like the. What was the name of the role? The woman that had to come watch Adam Driver be a dad.
Yeah, that was the. Let me just open Wikipedia.
She's kind of up and coming. She's actually a lead of a animated miniseries on Netflix as well. I can't remember the name of it, but the drawing of the woman looks exactly like her, and I thought her lines were very good. Just here's the way I can describe it. She comes across as a Mike Judge character, if you know what I mean. Like Mike Judge from King of the Hill and Office Space. He loves that type of character, and she very much feels like a King of the Hill character.
Yeah, Nancy Katz, the court-appointed evaluator.
She was great. She hasn't done too much, but she's one of the standouts for me because she's genuinely funny, but she's not doing much.
Yeah, I thought I recognized her from something, but I couldn't figure it out. I looked her up, didn't see her in anything, but I just realized now what she reminded me of. She reminded me of, what's her name from Twin Peaks? Lucy.
Yeah, I can see that. I was going to say she reminds me also a little bit of...
She has the voice.
She has that, and she also reminded me a little bit of... what was her name from Ferris Bueller? The one that's like the assistant to the principal, and the one who's also in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the one that works at like the car rental place where he gives the big fuck you speech, you know, like the wipe that grin off your fucking face. That lady, she reminded me of her a bit too. You talked about it at the beginning of this. You were interested in the divorce story and how it would be represented, and even you yourself having, come from a family of divorce. So speak to us a bit about how you felt in regards to the film's portrayal of that. Any standout, like any interesting details that the film presented or the way that it told this story?
Sure. So for context, my parents divorced when I was 10. So I was a teeny bit older than the kid in this film. and it was obviously a bit of a dramatic time in my life, but also one that I didn't have all of the details of. There were even a couple of things that I learned about the whole process, in my adulthood. I still don't have the, full context, the full timeline of everything that happened. But I do remember a lot of the whole family dynamic stuff. So in this film, big difference from my real life is, the whole the family, the in-laws, was very different. In this film, the in-laws still very much had a love for our lead guy. In my family, it was a big difference there where, yeah, they very much against my dad, and I saw that as what probably the most dramatic thing for me in as a child going through this whole divorce thing. Um, where suddenly, like, oh, my grandmother is saying, I remember her phrase, she was specifically saying my dad was like yucky dad or something like that. I'm like, that's insane. And I remember as a kid, like, trying to rationalize it. My thought was always like, oh, she must have really liked my dad and she feels upset about this whole divorce. And so seeing in this film that the mother-in-law really actually did like, the divorced husband, the separating husband, that kind of gave me a sort of like black comedy laugh, like, ha ha ha, that's what I thought was going on. That's what I wanted to be going on, but didn't quite work out. And yeah, just seeing we didn't see too much of the kid pre the divorce because it was all through those little montages at the beginning. But seeing the way that his attitude changed around the two parents reminded me of how I did see a different side to my parents through the divorce. A lot lighter than this one, though. In this film, Scarlett Johansson talks about how, oh, he's going through a bit of a mummy phase right now. For me, I I kind of had a thing where um, saw my dad more as an individual when the divorce
Mm.
was happening. And so when he did move to, quote, dad's house, which actually wasn't too far away from where I live now, um, I, I found myself appreciating my time with him a lot more. Um, yeah, I always kind of think back to the divorces obviously being a big part of something that shaped my life. And something in a weird way, I don't regret's not the right word because it wasn't my choice, but I don't look on it too badly because the things that happened there did shape my life. But at the time, yeah, obviously it was a very confusing and stressful thing.
What you just described, like that last bit, is very much what Alan Alda is trying to impart wisdom upon. He's very much like, hey, you think that, this is all chaotic now, but in the long run, it's going to shape their life as well. It's not just about you two and like your wants and needs. They're their own person and they're going to have a different reaction and relationship to you both after this stuff. So you got to keep that in mind. And that was a huge factor of this. And without it all just getting into your background and not pushing it far, but like a huge dramatic problem that they meet in this movie is trying to maintain a front of friendliness for the sake of the child, but having that crack and break so often because they're so wound up emotionally because the divorce proceedings are making it a rivalry and an antagonism between them. But you see how it is for divorced people, especially ones who want to have the parenting pretty equal on both sides of this is your day and this is their day. And it's a lot of talk of like, it's my night actually. And how much do you feel in those given scenes that maybe it's a bit unfair for them to drag the child with them back to their place because it's their night, in quotation, their night. And sometimes
Yeah,
it's
and
framed as positive, sometimes it's framed as maybe a bit negative, but it's never too over the line of like Adam Driver in this moment is being a prick about it. Sometimes it's more like, would you? Is the question, would you do that?
Yeah, well, I also saw it as a thing of like not only, their own personal wants, but this film, a constant thing that is coming back, constantly coming back, is that when you have the lawyer scenes where they're talking to each other and, they're debating each other like in their office or in the courtroom, it's like all of these minor things that you didn't think about are suddenly the most dramatic things. So I was thinking to myself, like, oh, if they were to take the child on the other's night, would that be something that the lawyer would pick at a later point? So it's like, considering all these minor things that should be, not a big deal.
The relationship becomes one of tactics. It becomes one of maneuvers and manipulations. And to give some, leeway as well, though, I do think that for the most part, the lawyers are portrayed favorably. There's obviously some, bristling up against what they are, but I think for the most part, especially by the end, Laura Dern in particular, her character does seem genuinely friendly and does seem to be invested and does allow some concessions when she probably wouldn't have. And she's just doing her job. Like, that's one of my things that I care about in films like this that want to have this real feeling, like this feeling of like an honest truth that's being bestowed upon us. I get so mad often when, say, if there's another version of this movie where the lawyers are just portrayed as greedy, fear-mongering assholes. But I think the film deliberately shows that when they do that, it is just a tactic. It's a part of the job that they have to do. But for like Alan Alda in particular and Laura Dern, they are shown to have a lot more layers and nuances to them while still having a bit of fun of like lawyers or LA people, am I right? Like the bit where they're having the mediation and they're getting really heated and then it just cuts abruptly to, should we get some food? Oh yeah.
Yeah, and everything just drops and it's just a casual situation.
Yes, and then it heats back up again. But I thought they handled and portrayed the lawyers in a fairly reasonable manner where there's still obviously a bit of a jab at lawyers because, lawyers, am I right? But I thought they humanized them well enough to, heck, even Ray Liotta, when you look back on it, it was like, no, everything he was saying at the very beginning was the right move to do because look how it went.
Yeah, I can definitely say that they know their job and they get very comfortable in the role. Like that whole first scene with Ray Liotta early on in the film, he just lays out there like all of these things are going to bite you in the ass. I've seen it happen. It's going to happen. You have to be ready for a fight kind of thing.
Well, Alan Alda, he presents it as like, well, if you do these things, it should be fine. And then when it's not fine, he's like, well, that was always a possibility. The classic, we'll go to court. Well, we don't want to go to court, but in case we do go to court.
Yeah, he's very much, he realizes the whole, what's the phrase? The whole contradictory nature of the entire job and like all the unfairness that's going on. But because he's speaking in such a calm manner, it really unnerves Adam Driver.
This film, again, there's so many different moving pieces of it. Like the lawyer stuff, especially with Alan Alda, it feels like a Catch-22 comedy where it's like these. It actually kind of reminded me a little bit, not fully, but of Intolerable Cruelty, for instance, where you have like these fast talking sequences where it's a lot of lingo and a lot of like catch you, like got to catch him in this fallacy and then, oh, I'm going to counter you with this fallacy and oh God. And again, that kind of Catch-22 nature where it's like, I know it's absurd, but this is how it is type deal. But then you have like the raw primal drama of like a family breaking apart and what do you do? Like, what is concessions? What do you believe is the right amount of giving up stuff for something other than yourself? Because Adam Driver is constantly rearing his head up against the idea of having to move away from New York. Because he's a New York guy and he has all of this stuff that is their lives, but are you going to do it for your kid? Is the question. And in the end, he does, but it's something that's tugging at the center of the soul. I also liked that the way that the kid was portrayed. Like, the kid's a little slow. I think it's fair to say the kid's a little bit eccentric as well, and like not nice. I like that too. Like, the kid's a little bit of a prick at times, but like in a way that feels true rather than just for the sake of being a prick. Like the kid actually did try to do the second Halloween. Like the kid actually did try to do it, even though clearly didn't want to. I thought that was like an example of how the film was being honest about the characters rather than making them feel purely like types.
I think over the past couple of years, I bring this up sometimes as a personal experience, but I've very much worked with kids like these.
Oh yes.
The scene where there's so many scenes, but the first one was when he's trying to get him to spell a word and like sounding it out. I think I've done that so many times where I'm just trying to, on the job. Okay, what's next? It makes this sound, so there you go. Encouraging them to do things, and then moments where you know that they can do it, but they're like, oh, I don't want to do it right now, and you have to somehow push them to do it. Yeah, it can be very tough for a teacher. I can imagine for a parent, it's also very tough.
How when you were watching it, since this is your first time, what was your reactions or the way you swayed to the characters as it went along? And like, how did that make you feel? Because like I said, this is me rewatching. I was kind of like appreciating on a rewatch value of like, the film in this moment is trying to sway me towards Adam Driver, only to then sway me the other way. And like, I was thinking a little bit like the minutia of the reasonings as to why. But what was your experiences with that?
Objectively, I was trying to remain in the middle, but I think because we have so many scenes of Adam Driver going through, things that he's deeming unfair, and you don't get to see all of the intricate details of the Scarlett Johansson side. I was mostly on Adam Driver's side. Would be keen to watch it again to, try to get the sort of experience you had this time. But yeah, I was almost seeing this film in a weird way similar to The Hunt, where that's a whole film where, happy main character guy and his life is just going to shit for all of these, overly complicated reasons that he just cannot get around, even though the truth of the matter is so simple. Like in that one, it's like, I've been falsely accused. Please listen to me. In this one, it's, we wanted to do this amicably. We want what's best for our kid. We're clearly going to lose out on a lot of money doing this when that money could be going to our kids', future college fund. Just seeing the weight of the reality crushing him, like I couldn't help but kind of side with him, and recognizing that he is a flawed character, but just seeing how unfair the situation was for him, like I really gravitated towards him.
But then there's also the thing of like, it's as unfair as it is because he makes it as unfair upon himself at times too. As intelligent and as eloquent as he is, he's also quite dumb. And even during the thick of it, where they're really locking horns, he will still think that things will just magically turn out all right because of goodness. And you're like, dude, no, shut up. And there is some level of arrogance there. Like, I think that he is the one they were given sympathy towards, but it's also done so that as we start to spend more time, we question why we're giving more sympathy towards him. There are so many great counters to his belief system that the film and he cannot dispute. And you're left wondering, well, why did I agree with that? Like, especially the idea of like, well, it's a discussion when it's for her, but it's a deal when it's with you. Oh, I see. And that constantly rears its head up in the movie. Like, that's always throughout it. Like, oh, it's a conversation when it's her, but oh, it's a deal. It's a concrete thing when it's his wants, needs, and desires. And yeah, I thought the argument scene, the big celebrated scene, was still hard hitting. It really went all over the place, but it's easy to draw upon the big screaming moment where he punches the wall, and that's memed upon. That's a meme in itself. But when I think of Adam Driver as an actor, for instance, I think of him at the beginning sitting on the couch or the armchair, and he just kind of has his hand over his mouth and kind of smiles and giggles at the fact he doesn't know how to start this. Like, that moment is just something where it's like, now that's where you get a good actor to really pull off, because in these disputes or conflicts, it's those little moments that can be forgotten about in a dramatized script. Oddly enough, something that I would think of too to recall as a movie that did some of this was what was it called? Was it called The Trip that we did? That was also like a husband and wife.
The Danish one?
Yes, that was a husband and
that was
wife
The Trip.
breaking up, and then they go to the cabin and they get into a different movie genre setting. But a lot of that was still thrown into the hijinks of that movie. A lot of these little quiet moments that happen in amongst all of the mania, and I love that. I thought that was great. I mean, you knew of this scene. How did it actually fare for you? Did it stand up to some of the reputation ahead of it?
Again, actually, I mentioned it earlier. The thing I remembered or knew of it was the calm beginning of it. I think I had heard prior to seeing that beginning section of it at the awards ceremony, wherever it was I did hear that this film had an argument in it, but I was compelled by the sort of calmness and the idea of like, oh, they still love each other. So yeah, seeing that scene devolve, like kind of slowly at first and then full force, it is intense. And as it goes on, like the last couple of bits of it, it's all like close-ups of their face, and you can't help but just be stuck in the middle of this argument, literally, because you're only seeing his head in this frame and then her upper body in this frame. And when he breaks down at the end after saying like, I want to kill you, and just apologizes, you see the weight of the whole film like just on top of them, and it's heartbreaking.
It is. There's a scene that I think of often, and I actually forgot it was from this movie, weirdly enough, but it's just one of those things. You've had this. We've all had this. You watch a movie some time ago, and there's just one scene or idea or visual that stays with you, and then you've kind of forgotten where it came from, but it's still in your brain, like this one thing. And the one thing for me was him realizing that he just slashed his arm with the knife, and him trying to casually be like, it's fine. I remembered that, but I couldn't recall that it was from this movie. So when he was constantly playing with it, I'm like, oh, that's it. That's right. Of course. Yes, I remember. Specifically the visual of him on the kitchen floor lying down, just being like, I'm fine. I'm just tired. That was just such a great sequence of events.
Film suddenly becomes cringe comedy in the middle of this, very awkward already sequence with the mediator, not the mediator, the
Observer.
The observer, that whole sequence and ending on that, just, you're seeing this character break down in multiple different ways.
There was a great dramatic moment right before it that the cinematography did an excellent job of, which was it furthered the big argument scene where he punched the wall. We get in this moment where he's just sitting with the observer casually. He notices that she's looking up at the hole, like where he punched the wall, and you get like this side view camera angle from his point of view, and it looks so like jagged, and like the implication of it from a visual end is so huge, and you can tell from his reaction, like, oh God, oh no, look how this looks. But also, we know a lot from his own background, like his fear and worries is becoming his own parents who were drunk, violent, whatever. We don't get too much on it, but we know it's a sore spot for him. So that just camera shot of the hole in the wall is just great, just quick to the point of just, you know what this character's worries are, and look how it's coming to pass.
Yeah, this film earns those little moments where something minor can mean so much.
Is there anything else you want to discuss about the film?
Before we do, the trip is Norwegian, not Danish.
Thank you. Get it right.
I have. That's why I said it. Let's see.
While you're thinking, did you enjoy the scene where he got served?
That entire scene, even before that, was really great because that was we've mentioned it before, but haven't really focused on it. These two characters, they have an acting background. One being very theatre, one starting in film, but then doing theatre during the marriage, and you realize that, like, oh, okay, Scarlett Johansson's family have acting backgrounds as well. And they're discussing this entire plan about, like, okay, he's going to come here soon. What we're going to do is, you take the kid upstairs, you talk to him here, I'll come down and warn him about something, and then you come and you serve him the papers because legally I can't. And the sister is so stressed about it and, constantly asking questions about, like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And it's this very funny, but again, black comedy kind of thing where they're going to do something very serious that's going to really break Adam Driver's heart, but they're being so silly and, I guess, kind of weirdly realistic about it. And then as soon as Adam Driver comes in, he just kind of takes over the energy of everything. He comes in, he kisses his wife, and he sees the mother-in-law and's like, Jima! And, you get that whole dynamic that you brought up earlier. And he has this back and forth with the sister about, like, these minor things, and even at one point asks, like, are you okay? Because she's so stressed about everything. Yeah, that whole scene just devolves into chaos and ends on a sad note, but it was funny going through it.
We even get talks about the kid's pooping. I'm giving him treats for pooping. I don't think you should reward him for pooping.
Yeah, you get a sense of their married life. Like, oh yeah, we did this at one point. We should stop.
Yeah. But is there anything else you want to flag up, or are we good to move on and give the next recommendation?
Yeah, there's probably a million more things we could talk about, but really, this is just a great film. I remember yesterday I was on the phone with my mom and we were talking about something else. I got COVID.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, that's why you asked where am I at the beginning, because we're doing this remotely. And after I finished that conversation, I was like, yeah, look, it's happened. I'm past the worst of it, but you have to heal. Can't do my weekend plans. But by the way, I watched Marriage Story and it was brilliant. You really should see it. Like, I wanted to turn the conversation to the film. I enjoyed it that much.
Oh, well, hopefully your mum does check it out, and hopefully she enjoys it as well. And maybe she has some perspectives on things.
Yeah, I guess one more thing I'll bring up about, like, the personal, divorce experience thing. On a more lighter note, even though there was a lot of tension during that divorce time, I don't know how intricate the law stuff went, but I could definitely see tension, but in the way that my mum talked about it. But in recent years, like, my heart is warmed whenever I do catch them, talking in any way about, like, parenthood or whatever. And even minor moments like when someone dies and, like, they will go out of their way to call them and ask them, how are you going? Like, my father's mum died not too long ago. You were actually there when I found out about that. And my mum was like, oh yeah, I'll give Piotrek a call, my dad. And this is a bit of a funny turn, but when Prince died, my dad actually called my mum and said, like, hey, how you going? Because my mum, huge Prince fan.
Huge Prince fan. Maybe one day we'll do Purple Rain just for your mum.
And I recommend this film.
I recommend it too. Even just here's the magical thing about movies. They could get you under the spell or not, and this is one that got us under the spell. And when talking about it, it was like, holy crap! Taking a step back, how does this cohere tonally? Because there's so much tonal whiplash going on in this, and yet when I was watching it, it never crossed my mind. It all just flowed together for me. The fact that, Alan Alda can be such a fuddy-duddy one moment and then be the bastion of wisdom the next didn't even make me, I didn't question it because I'm like, well, he can pull it off. And I think that's a lot of it is, a lot of the magic tricks are pulled off in this movie. Because how do you feel about that? Like, did you feel that stuff when you were watching it or now when we're talking about it? Because we're just talking about it, I was just like, man, this film really all over the place, but somehow when I was watching it, it didn't even cross that in my mind at all.
I guess, yeah, it's just a testament to all of the, production elements coming together. Like, I don't think, as silly as it can get at times or as, whiplashy as it can be, I do think that the way the characters acted in all those scenes did feel natural. I think the only times where it didn't, it was played for a specific effect, would have been like a lot of the lawyer scenes where it was like, oh, we're having this serious discussion. Now we're going to talk about lunch. And the whole point of this little interaction here is that Adam Driver's going to be really conflicted about the whiplash and not even be able to pick out what he wants to eat. Like, yeah, there was purpose to it even when it did feel a little scripted.
But Bartek, the space. Oh, the space.
Yeah, right. We should move to Western Australia.
I liked when he said, fuck the space. I'm sick of hearing about the fucking space. You can't walk anywhere. I mean, yes, you can. No, not really. But the space. So I am recommending a film next for the podcast, and we are also going to be going to a film that has a lot of... I'll just say it up front. I've not seen this film. I don't think Bartek has seen this film, but I'm very confident to say that it has a lot of tonal stuff for us to really feast upon because we're going to a Japanese film and we're revisiting a filmmaker that we've done only one prior film to before, which I think both of us have only seen this director's previous film that we have talked about on the podcast, and we are going to be talking about Memories of Matsuko, which is by the same director as Confessions.
Right, okay.
This
should be interesting.
Yes. This is one of his, in quotations, comedy films, because for those who have not seen Confessions, it's a very, very dramatic movie, but also very funny. But the big thing about that movie was the director, it was his first non-comedy film. And I said to you when we watched that and covered it, I want to see one of his comedy films. And so Memories of Matsuko is one of his highly regarded ones. It's one of the ones that came out just a bit before in 2006. Mm-hmm. And it is a musical.
Oh, okay.
Apparently. Or at least it has some musical elements in it. So I'm going back to him. I've been wanting to revisit his work. This film is available on Amazon in the US, and for us down here, it is on Vimeo, but also, weirdly enough, that Russian website, I'm pretty sure, has it too.
From last week?
I'm pretty sure, because I was looking it up when you look this up. But also there's ways to buy this. You can get this, buy this digitally or whatever. But I am curious to give this a watch. I've been really thinking about this director a lot. I've been wanting just to see one of his other ones because the director Tetsuo Nakashima, I've only seen Confessions, and
you've seen it 3 times.
I've rewatched it a lot since we covered it. If there's any, I'll talk about this more next week, but if there's any film of this podcast that we have covered that I would love to review again, Confessions is in my top 5 because I don't think I loved it enough when I first talked about it. So everyone make sure to check that out. You can find us on your social medias of Facebook and Twitter. We post there, so you can give us a like on there of our post, comment on what your opinions are of the movies we've discussed, and if you want to recommend stuff to us, you can hit us up on social medias or directly over at our email address, which, Bartek, what's the email address again?
Our email address is spitandpolished@gmail.com.
We are on all of the podcasting sites, so make sure to follow us on one of those and give us a rating and review, share the show around, and all of that great stuff. It's always just wonderful to hear from you. We get a lot of comments on our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube as well, so make sure to check the description of this episode and you should find a plethora of places where we are at. Bartek, hopefully you recover, you get better, and next time we're here, we can be in person again and talk about a wacky Japanese movie, which I'm expecting silly sound effects, because that in Confessions was one of the things I'm like, that's so weird, it must be a quirk of the director.
And how many licensed songs?
Oh, how many Western licensed songs, and why are they all going to be Radiohead?
And that's the way. I
like it.
Yep. So I think last time we ended talking about the sort of running craziness that's happening on our podcast, where like every Christmas for the past 2 years, it's been me picking foreign films.
Yes.
And we made the joke that I made the joke that, I'm looking for an excuse to call in sick so that it doesn't fall on me again. And the funny thing that's happened here, considering that I had COVID and still insisted on doing this podcast, is I actually very easily found a film that seems pretty good for doing for the Christmas episode. And I want to now not miss any weeks. So the fact that I caught COVID after finding that film kind of seems like the universe is against me.
Well, everyone, you better tune in a couple weeks' time when we have to hear and find out and watch whatever weird, non-Hollywood Christmas holiday film Bartek has got for us.
I'll give slight hint. It is from a culture that we have covered one film from before, and it was one that we had a hard time narrowing down.
Oh.
Or?
Oh, well, everyone.
A little bit of a hard time.
A little bit of a hard time, so hopefully this one won't be too hard of a time for you.